Okay, guys, we're just about to start.
You're good to go.
Let's go. Morning, everyone. Welcome this morning. Let us stand for the opening karakia. Whakataka.
Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta. Kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mai ora.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome again, and thank you for your presence. Thank you to those online watching, and thank you to the staff. It's a bit shorter meeting today, but nonetheless just as important. So we will get into it. Apologies. We have apologies from Deputy Mayor Greer. And then Amelia is here.
I am.
And we have Councillor Annan online. Could I call that those be moved? Thank you, Councillor Nippy, up to Councillor Taylor second. All those in favour? Any declarations of conflict of interest to today's meeting? No. All right, so we'll get into it. In case people want to talk about the annual plan. Okay, we'll call for the recommendation that council suspends the standing orders. Could I have a mover for those? Councillor Byrne, second Councillor Taylor. All those in favour?
Aye.
It's carried. Right, could I please call the first item, Mr. Chamberlain, adoption of the annual plan 2026-27.
Good morning, Your Worship, councillors. So today you have a paper in front of you considering the annual plan for the next financial year, which starts in a few days' time. So just as way of background, you'll recall that the annual plan for 26-27 is year 3 of the current long-term plan. Year 3 of the long-term plan originally indicated a 10.9% rate increase. Officers have been working hard over the past nearly be more than 6 months now to get that down. You'll recall that on the 4th of June, I stood here presenting pretty much the same paper. And at that point, I had 2 annual plans in front of you. One was a 6.7% average rate increase, which ignored the conflict in the Middle East and the impacts that was having on fuel prices, and a second one which factored in some fuel cost escalations and some fee and surcharging for the cost of fuel. And that budget showed an average increase of 7.4. Obviously at the time, this is back at the beginning of June, it didn't look like the Middle East conflict was going to be resolved anytime soon. All the commentators were saying that fuel prices, even if the war was resolved, were going to stay higher for longer, and that the whole supply chain was disrupted. Based on the facts that you had in front of you at the time, after much debate, you decided to go with the 7.4% annual plan. Obviously, since then, the world has changed again. We seem to be in this period of fast change, and a peace deal has been reached, and the finer details are still being negotiated. What that's meant is that the fuel prices have eased in the last couple of weeks, and obviously we're now bringing this paper back to you to give you a chance to reconsider your decision of the 4th of June. So you'll see at the bottom of page 8, there's a graph there showing fuel prices. They show that they were up nearer the $4 mark at the height of the conflict back in end of March, and in this graph they'd fallen to nearly $3. I've had a look on the Gas Spy website today, which is the one that we were linking to for our fuel surcharging, remembering that the original paper suggested that fuel surcharging would apply from July if the diesel price was still above $2.50. As of today, it's $2.59. So it's nearly back to that trigger point. So yeah, so that leaves us now with a decision as to whether we rescind our decision of the 4th of June or whether we stick with our original decision. So I'll leave it in your capable hands to debate that notion.
Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain, and thank you to the finance team for the flexibility. These aren't normal times that we're in, and we are having to be quick on our feet to respond to these events while doing the best we can for our ratepayers. Any questions of Mr. Chamberlain on the report? We have done a lot of work and discussion on this up till now. Councillor Byrne.
Yeah, obviously 100% support going back to 6.7. Just looking at the risk and assurance paper later, and it does say that OCR forecasts say the global outlook remains uncertain, and supply chain disruptions are still expected, in particularly higher prices for petrochemicals in a more fragmented global trading environment. Do we think that that will still have an impact on the budget for the next 12 months?
Even if prices continue their current trend, they're still well above pre-war levels. So I do believe that there will be some impact. It's not going to be nearly as dramatic as it was, and I think that we can manage that within our normal cost control type environment, as long as it stays at this sort of level and doesn't spike back up. Obviously the peace deal is fragile, and I won't try and speculate on whether it will last or not, but right here, right today, I believe that we can live with the 6.7 and deal with it through our normal sort of managing our activities and our cost control.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. Is that this is the rates portion of that, there's nothing precluding us, or we can always go back and put fees and charges up in relation to if we're getting, I forget what the name is for the
yeah, so obviously the resolution as it's written takes us back to the 6.7 with no fuel surcharging. The thing about rates is that when you set them, they are set for a 12-month period and can't be changed. Fees and charges, normally we set for a 12-month period, but there isn't actually anything to stop us coming back and reconsidering fuel surcharging at a later date, should we choose to. Obviously, the world would have to change again before we did that, because it's not something that we would like to do, but there is the opportunity to have a second bite at the cake, so to speak, if the world turns to custard again.
More questions? Okay, well, it sounds like I'm reading the room right. The recommendation is support for A, B, C, and D. So I'm happy to move that we move those resolutions A, B, C, and D, and not E. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Muggeridge. Once again, I'd just like to thank staff for the flexibility and having to adapt to the changing environment we're in, and just acknowledge this council for seeing the impact that the peace deal and the change in the Middle East was going to have on us, and just reacting quickly enough to respond to that and provide some relief. It may not seem like much, but some relief to our ratepayers, because every little bit counts at the moment in this economic environment. And so very happy to make this late change to the annual plan and be able to bring the rates back down to where all the good work the council staff and the finance team have got us down to that lower position in the first place. Councillor Margaret.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the hard work that went into getting it down to 6.7%. And the only reason we put it up was because of the fuel crisis, and I probably instigated that, so probably up to me to rescind it. And yeah, I see today the diesel price is down to $2.21. So in December it was about $2. So yeah, we're not hovering much above where it was. So yeah, the only reason it went up was because the fuel was up. So now the fuel's down, so we bring it down again.
Councillor Byrne.
I'm not going to say, no, I will not even say it, but obviously I 100%, I 100% support. You know, I voted to hold the line knowing that, you know, if we went with 7.4, it was going to be baked in, even if the war ended. And I think we're just lucky that well, let's hope they reach a peace agreement. We're just lucky that it's actually happened before we've actually set the rate. So yeah, I know we can't, well, we shouldn't set rates, no, you know, with what ifs in mind. And I know we always have the catastrophic events, you know, set aside, but yeah, I think we just need to be careful in the future that, yeah, when we're trying to look into a crystal ball and yeah, see what's going to happen in the future, it's very difficult. So I'm just glad that it's happened at the beginning before we actually set the rates, and yeah, 100% support returning to 6.7.
Councillor Monahan.
And I better, because I actually seconded the motion. So, but I believed it was more, at that time, financially prudent long-term option. And that was due to the uncertainty of fuel costs and the risk of future deficit we could get into. But I'm pleased we had this little opportunity, this little gap to rescind that. And then that was because of the change in circumstances. So when talking to people out there, when really looking at all the facts, I think they'd be a lot happier at the 6.7. And the funny thing is, I've been talking to a couple of businesses in Waipukurau this week. Even though the positive rural financial situation is out there, these businesses have not seen the trickle down. And so hopefully it will happen. So I think we are doing the right thing at this stage.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'd like to, I'm supporting it as well, but I think we need to recognise that it is still a very volatile global situation, and we need to be proactive and continue to ask questions and continue to keep an eye on it should we need to move other things around in the budget or the fees and charges as mentioned before or whatever, because I think it is our responsibility. We've flagged that it could be a major issue. Just because things have changed in the last couple of weeks doesn't mean it can't change again. So I think as long as we're proactive in following the situation.
Anyone else? No. Okay, thanks everyone, and thank you, Councillor Monahan, for acknowledging how tough it is still out there for many of our different sectors and people in the community, and it is. And so I guess the main point going forward from here is the work doesn't stop. We have our long-term planning between now and this time next year, and we just keep going. Where do we find savings? Where do we be more efficient? How do we keep bringing the pressure down on our ratepayers while still providing the best services that we can to our community? And that's That's our next 12 months. So thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, and that's our that is our one and only agenda item for today. We just need to set the date of our next council meeting, which is the 1st of July 2026. Can I have a mover for? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Second, Councillor Nepiaptu. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And we do just have a public excluded item actually. So I'll move that we move into PE, and that is for the appointment delegations of the Chief Executive. Can I have a seconder, please, Councillor Taylor? All those in favour?
Well, welcome everybody to the Central Hawke's Bay District Council Audit and Risk and Assurance Committee meeting for Thursday, the 25th of June. Do we want to submit? We should start off with a karakia. Do we all want to? Yep. Right.
Kia mā kina kia mā tai e he aka ana
So we have one apology from Councillor Kirsty Lawrence. Otherwise, we're all here. Everybody want to move their apology?
Happy to move.
Chair. Seconded. Thank you very much, Councillor. Carried. Conflicts of interest. Has anybody got any changes, conflicts? No?
I think I mentioned that I was at Rotorua. I'm on Rotorua Council Chair, so I don't think I have any interaction. Just Rotorua, but anyhow, just sort of mention it.
You just fire that through an email to team and we can. Thank you, Michael. Right, standing orders. There's a recommendation that we move and suspend some during the meeting as noted in our agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder for moving into what framework, please? Councillor, seconder. Thank you. And all carried. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Andrew, did you get a mover and a seconder for the conflict of interest?
Oh, conflicts of interest. There was no new. Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 17th of February. Recommendation is that we approve these as true and correct. Has anybody got any observations or questions on them before? Comfortable with those? Right, can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Will. The motion is carried that we approve the minutes from the meeting held on the 17th of February and circulated in our pack. The report section. So. Sorry, I can't find the page number. Page 10. So we have the reporting on previous actions. Brent, you're completed. Your one, the only outstanding one we have on that is the risk and assurance financing strategy related to natural disasters.
Correct. So at the last meeting, we obviously received the loss modelling report and came up with a strategy on how to finance our way out of a natural disaster, and some of those action points will be taken into the LTP and developed as part of the financial strategy. So that's.
Any questions of Brent regarding that? And any other questions around the ones that have been completed? More comfortable with that? Great, thank you. Can I have a move in a second to receive the resolutions monitoring report, please? Mike, thank you, and Cyril, thank you very much. And all in favour? Right, carried. Thank you. Right, we move now through to the health and safety report. Welcome, Michelle.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
It's still in the morning. Yes. So this report provides a governance level view of health and safety, wellbeing performance across council and contract activities. The focus is on the critical risk exposure, where the controls are being applied in practice and where assurance is still developing. I'll take the report as read, but just want to highlight a few key points. The first one being is that the critical risk program is moving from paper into practice. Some standards you'll see in the report are showing as off track, but this actually reflects deliberate reprioritisation. As a small team, we are focusing on the highest risks and the controls that have the greatest impact across council. Second, the focus is on making controls usable for staff. The dynamic risk assessments, team-specific training and ICAM actions are helping turn the standards and investigation findings into practical tools that staff can apply in their day-to-day work. And third is the contractor reporting is becoming more useful for assurance. The updated template is giving us better visibility of the critical risk exposure and where the controls are being applied and checked in practice. And contract reporting is giving better visibility of the critical risks and the control application. There were no WorkSafe notifiable events in this period, but in confidence and consistent application of controls is still developing. But overall, the report is showing progress from defining our critical controls to applying them in practice with effort focused on where it matters most in application.
Just one question, because we're up to the 30th of April, the reporting period. Has been anything subsequent, any notifiable accidents since between now,
So we haven't had any notifiable events by contractors or council. However, we did have a notification from WorkSafe with one of our diesel shed, which is in progress. So that has since that report, and that's well in hand.
Questions committee, councillor.
I just have a couple of questions through you regarding the critical risk, and we touched on it at the last meeting regarding the risk on from dog control, and I see it's under review nationally now. Are we feeding into that national review?
Through the chair. Sorry, can you just elaborate a little
Well,
bit?
just the risk. We spoke on it briefly, and yeah, it's been Miss Bassfield coming up last week about the increase of dog, dangerous dogs in our district, and I was just wondering, there's a national review going on and whether we are feeding into that.
So through the chair, yes, there has been, I believe, just an announcement made with a potential change for a legislative position essentially for dog control. As I understand it through Mr. Mackay, is that we're well placed to participate through that process, and largely we are already doing the things that are getting proposed as part of the legislation changes. They're not yet at a point where we're able to submit it, still very early days, but absolutely when we are able to give the opportunity, we will actively engage, but we are in a good place to do so, and that we're already doing what's being proposed.
You have a second?
Yep.
Yep.
thank
Go
you.
for it.
Thank you. The other one was regarding the working at heights, and I'm thinking of when we have hirers for the municipal theatre and, you know, the rigging and things that they do there. What guarantees do we have in place that the people that are working in the top of the theatre are actually, you know, trained at working at heights?
Through the chair, that's a really great question. So before as it has been identified as a critical risk, we expect the contractors to actually provide us with a job safety analysis, which identifies the critical risks and the training and what controls are need to be in place. And our municipal theatre team are very vigilant in getting that. We've also just recently put our municipal theatre staff through working at height training, and we are going to get some further training down at the theatre and involve the M&D as part of that, because they are high users of that. So we actually want to make sure that what we're doing is inclusive and making sure that we've got the right things in place. And so that's a qualified trainer, and we've asked them to come down here so that they can see our facility. And they're the experts. So that's the stage one has been done, and we're just trying to finalise a date for that to happen. So yes, only qualified people are going up who have had working at height training, and that's all managed free and coming in to do that stuff.
Thank you for your report, Michelle. I had a couple of questions, and as you know, I'm a bit of a stickler for getting things done on time, etc. I'm just asking a question about the critical risk standards, and you've got a table there which nicely documents where we are with everything with the standards. I don't get any comfort as to when they're all going to be completed by. You say that they're totally incomplete or largely incomplete. I kind of like to know when we're going to do it all, so that helps for me to get understanding that we're going to do it by a certain time.
Through the chair, that's a very valid point. At the beginning, we did have a time plan for this over 2 years, and as I've identified, we're actually quite a small team. So what we've had to do is, instead of going vertically down and making sure that all those critical risk standards are ticked off, and this also became quite apparent when we did the ICAM investigation within the event that we had, that what we needed to do was be sure and comfortable that we'd actually gone horizontal. And so what that means is that we've actually identified the critical risks and we're actually putting them into place. So what we're doing is we're actually looking at what critical risks controls are seen amongst all of those critical risk standards, and pulling them out and operationalizing those. So we're working a little bit smarter and a little bit more effectively to maintain the safety. So as opposed to the standard as a document, we're moving from paper to practice, but trying to do the same things. But because it's also health and safety is dynamic, we did put a time period on that. But because of the shifts and changes of things that have been happening, and with our increase in interactions with the public, so hence we've reprioritised those, and we're now moving into the next financial year. So we're just actually we've had some extra resource put into the team, so we'll be able to clearly relook at that and see what is a really appropriate timeline for that. So yeah, that's where we're at.
So at this stage, you haven't got a definitive timeline to have them all done by. You are going to do it. So maybe that's something we could report on next time. Would that be practical? Was that okay to ask that? Or?
Yes, through the chair, yes. We'll be able to redefine what that looks like. And, you know, health and safety is often, you know, you have to have a look and go, okay, how can we reprioritize this based on what's happening around us and what those priorities are? And I think
Totally get that. We're doing everything that's right within the resources we've got. And that's really good. So really happy with that. Yeah. And the other question I had was, I wasn't sure I didn't understand what off track and reprioritization meant on your critical risk program. I didn't quite catch that. And you may have just said it, but I'm still, the penny hasn't dropped yet.
through the chair. Yeah, no, what I just said is exactly that. So when we set that program right at the beginning, we had a timeline for them. However, because of as we've moved through them, we've got a bit more off track with those because we've reprioritized and because of the other events that have happened, and we've actually moved in line with what really matters. And it's been been interesting as we're continuously looking at how can we do this better, and are we actually focusing on the right stuff?
That makes sense. You've got limited resource. You've got to focus on the right things, the things that are critical, get them out of the way, and then the more minor things, finish those at a later date. Yeah, got it. Thank you very much. That's me. I don't have any more questions. Thanks.
Any other questions, Michael? Will you? No, he's done.
I'm done. Thanks very much. Wonderful.
Well, just one, the contractor reporting, and there's one real spike there. Is that any concern for us, or
Which one?
in the total number?
Total number of events?
Yeah.
On page 26.
24.
First version, then you can start.
Through the chair. So that one there is the total number of events. It's the yellow spike. Yeah, so that is the total number of events that have been reported in the month. The contractor reporting, we have updated our contractor reporting template because there is a lot of different culture amongst the contractors with reporting. And some contractors report more than others and at different levels. In particular, the one that you're referring to, they do have a reasonably high reporting culture. None of those in there were major ones that were of a concern. But what we are doing is that when they are coming in, we're actually looking at them and going, have you given us enough information to provide that assurance? So that's where that contractor template is coming in and looking at those critical risks. And also that contractor is not as developed in the critical risk area as other contractors as well. So does that answer?
Yeah, that's fine.
Does that give you the assurance that, yeah, and hopefully that's looking at those trends. And
yeah, thank you.
And I understand you've re-tendered some of those contracts recently, haven't you? Then
yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, we've re-tendered the road maintenance contract. So we've consolidated a number of functions into one large contract over a 10-year period.
And I saw on the public stuff that you've some of the subbies coming from local area as well. So I assume as part of that evaluation process, health and safety was right up there.
Absolutely, yeah. There's minimum requirements for those subcontractors as part of the quality assessments. But also those subcontractors, the three subcontractors will sit under a really mature tier 1 operation. So they will learn a lot over the next, well, even in the first 12 months, they'll learn a lot about how to work in that environment and on the public road network.
Yeah, so that was the heart of my question. So as part of that framework, the prime contractor is going to be heavily involved in the management of the health and safety down to those sub-E levels.
Absolutely, because they have single point accountability from our perspective. We have a contract with Downer. Downer are then accountable for delivering all services through their subcontractors or self-performing. Okay. And we've actually got 5 key result areas, one of which is growing local capability and capacity. So that health and safety is a key part of that. They have responsibility to support those subcontractors to grow their capability and capacity to deliver effectively on the roading network.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, that contract commences next Wednesday.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Yep. And just from an officer's due diligence process, given you've had a major event with a new contractor, will some of our big councillors get out and observe and satisfy themselves around these things? I think you should put that in your diaries at some point. And it's one of those things we have to do as part of the legislation, to do your own personal due diligence on those. Maybe parts of this committee should go. And do that as a
Talked about site.
So if councillors are doing that on our behalf, I'm comfortable with that, to involve, but if there's an opportunity just to, once they've got their feet under the table and a bit of reporting coming through.
Chair, are you saying specifically those new local contractors that are brought on board, or just in general?
Oh, just in general, really. But given you've got something new on the block, it's an opportunity too, as well. Yeah. Yeah, it's just the way the legislation's written. You know, we can do a lot here, but there's still that personal obligation to go and do that. So, and we can. It doesn't mean the whole committee has to go, but somebody from the committee should be there just to. Yeah.
And through you, Chair, I guess Annan would come with us and to sort of help explain, point out the health and safety characteristics of any working site.
Yeah, and especially if they're starting a big project, you know, going to the first toolbox meeting or something like that, and good. Just another question. Going with really, Mike stole my thunder a little bit around timelines and bits and pieces, but I think the other thing around, though they're red, there's still assurances that there are systems and processes in place at the moment in order to keep our people safe, right? So it's not as if we're saying they aren't there. You know, that it's just a matter of going through this due process of refreshing everything, isn't it? So that's the emphasis that's being made.
And through you, Mr. Chair, we've actually seen that in our scenario plannings that have been happening since we had the event last year, and actually that the teams that are putting those controls, those critical controls into place, and we've actually seen them when we've actually been faced with a similar kind of public interaction, that those controls have actually been put in place, which has stopped the risk increasing, which is really pleasing to see. So there's been a lot of uptake by the other, the group managers and the staff about.
Yeah, I get a sense from the post event too is a very important period, particularly with the interaction with the public and the support given to people afterwards. That's sort of also a key focus, isn't it, in terms of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kicks in very, very quickly within, straight after that event, and is ongoing. So I think the other piece is that it's just continuing with those, those interactions, that it doesn't just stop, that there's a continuous process and continuously improving it.
It's fantastic that we're learning from what's happening in our own organisation. I'm just wondering, like nationally, there's been a couple of fatalities, and obviously it's a critical risk for us about working in the transport corridor. I'm just wondering, how do we get assurance from our contractors that they're taking on what's happening nationally and the learnings? How are they implementing the learnings? How do we know that? I mean, we're shifting to a risk-based, but how do we see that? How are we assured?
Yeah, through you, Chair, we're staying very close to the new NZGTTM risk-based requirements. So there have been a number of fatalities on State Highway network and local roads, and the purpose of the risk-based approach is to look at sites very specifically and not just follow a cookie cutter approach to traffic management. All the tier 1 contractors are on board with this, and they're driving it within their own businesses, and there are certain deadlines that are set by NZTA, but we're also kind of driving that consistent approach across all our suppliers as well. So we're kind of very much in the tent, kind of making sure that we are actually implementing this risk-based approach across everything that we do, not just works that are funded by the Transport Agency.
Just one final question, Michelle. Given our people work quite remotely in some of our parts of the Pronga House and along the coastline or up in the ranges and things, if an event did happen, and it required an ambulance. I know we don't have thousands of them in the district. Is there an engagement process with those sorts of providers and you know, the local hospital around? We know you take an hour to get out there and before you've got any true medical support. Is there been engagement with those sort of providers around just understanding their limitations around how they could respond and assist and help in the event something happened, and what practical steps we have to take in the interim from the time the accident happened to the time the ambulance arrives? Is that those sort of wider considerations being taken into account in a remote area like this?
They have certainly, and so when we looked at all these critical risks, one of the things that we put in place as a control to minimise the consequence was lone worker devices. So when people are going out, and they don't necessarily have to be alone, that the device, if somebody fell, or it's got an SOS button, or if there was no motion, it would automatically go off. That alerts our emergency services. The first port of call is actually police, because of what you just brought up with, the services not being, don't have a lot of ambulance, like we used to. And so that automatically will trigger the police. But on those lone worker devices, there's actually a message that if the person is able to, they can actually push it and say, send an ambulance. We're continuously doing training on that. We've just kicked off another training to make sure that people are comfortable using those devices. In a community like ours, it's always a hard one, especially because even our local GPs, if you are not registered with that GP, they will not generally see you, and they will send you to A&E. So therefore, we would, automatically here call an ambulance. But for those remotes, we have got that backup process in place. Have we had any direct conversations with ambulance services outside our emergency response? No, we haven't. It is a limited resource, and so it's looking, how we can minimise it internally here, and that's one of the things we had done.
The key learning out of that is acknowledging that there will be a gap between an event and actually some professionals arriving to support you if you needed that on site. And it's just what practically can you do in the interim? And it goes back to the first aid training and the bits and pieces like that. The local marae might have some stuff to help out. It's just knowing where in your community getting access to those resources are. Okay, and it is what it is in a community like this. So, sometimes you've actually got roading contractors down the road, or actually could be working in the area who've also got capability, right? So,
well, just a couple of questions. It's all about working alone. So one would expect that you have a policy or a statement on working alone. The answer should be yes. Yeah, is that right? Okay, that's fine. And the other thing I was going to ask, and it's a different thing altogether, is Andrew, you mentioned about councillors being involved in some of the health and safety aspects. My question is probably more the chief executive. Would the chief executive give a report maybe once or twice a year on health and safety? Because that's the chief executive going around and looking within the organisation and reporting back to this committee on how he sees health and safety. And it also demonstrates leading from the top in terms of he's out there seeing in the field, and it's just basically what the chief executive would do anyway. It's just documenting it. I say this because it's something that I've experienced in 2 other councils that I'm involved with, and I think it works really well. Of course, the chief executive might feel that that's probably overkill and it's a lot of extra work, but maybe we could have that discussion.
I'm happy to feed into reports coming from Michelle anyway, on a semi-regular basis, because I'm not averse to that.
No,
I don't want another report to write.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I'm very mindful of that. The case that happened at Auckland, and that's becoming, the pressure's becoming more now, and it's more a case of covering your behind And it's, you know, seen doing it as well as an extra layer that demonstrates, and for you, I would have thought it's a comfort thing.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to add a section into the reporting that comes.
I think the point I made earlier on is important was the fact you've got to document you've done that, because WorkSafe, when they come in, do the investigation, you can give a verbal, response and saying, look, I was out there 3 weeks ago and I looked X, Y, and Z, everything else, but they heavily rely on documented evidence that you've actually done that. So it's a very good point. And it's just when you're out there, it's just taking back. There's these little checklists you can get as well when you go out and saying, well, these are the 4 or 5 things. So even if councillors are going out and doing things in the community, they also can observe our members or our contractors doing things. There's quite good little checklists as well. So it's almost, just even that little tick that, and a couple of comments at the bottom and sign and dating in it, and just gets, because it's a scan and it's on file. It's quite a useful way of doing it too. Because you're sort of inherently doing it all the time.
Well, yeah, and you're usually combining one trip, Mark and I and Ben Swinburne, when looked at our water treatment and wastewater treatment operations, and we were talking about all manner of things, but we were also looking at safety stuff as we went around.
Yeah, it's just a matter of documenting it and say, yes, we did it.
Through the chair, I can just provide you a bit more assurance there. And throughout my report, when I've talked about it, the dynamic risk assessment, that's what that does. It's a online tool that you go to, and actually you do a 5-minute safety check. And so that's a new thing we've just implemented. We've always had it, but we're actually refining it to the individual groups, so that it's a bit bespoke, in line with the critical risks that they'll be faced with. So we've got one being trialled at the moment, and then we will roll that out with the training.
And the new legislation that's coming through helps smaller organisations around this to focus on critical risks and the critical controls. They're not after paper cut stuff.
Yeah.
It's quite good. So it takes that wider burden off, and gets quite back to the realities of working, and so that's quite practical. I don't think it's passed yet, but it's on its way, I think. So it makes, I don't know whether we fall under the small criteria. We don't. Okay. Yeah. Oh, any other questions for Michelle? Are we happy to? What are we doing here? This committee receives the health and safety report for the period 1 January to 30 April 26. I've got a mover and a seconder. Mover and Michael, seconder. Thank you very much. And thank you, Michelle. We now move through to the Treasury report. Brent, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, councillors and independents. So in front of you, you have your standard Treasury report. It's just goes through and looks at how we're going against our Treasury policy. So I'm happy to report that at the end of May, Council was holding $9.2 million in liquid funds. This is a little bit higher than usual because we've just received the last quarter rates instalment on the 20th of May. Also at the end of May, Council had $48 million of external debt. This is down slightly from a year earlier, and despite the report saying that we were likely to need to borrow again in June, I can tell you that we will go to the end of the year with that 48 million being our debt figure. Council has a number of interest rate swaps in place now, and this has actually brought our average weighted cost of funds down to 4.5%. Interestingly, on page 29, I've inserted a chart there that Bancorp supplied me, which shows the difference between the floating interest rate, which is the BKBM rate, and the different swap rates, you'll see that over the past couple of months, those have spread apart quite significantly. That's an indication that the markets are now pricing in that the OCR can't stay where it is and that there will be significant interest rate rises through the remainder of this year. Again, over on page 30, you'll see our standard interest rate cover graph. I thought I'd just spend a little bit of time talking about this. So the grey shaded area, which is increasing, shows the forecast council debt. Now this is, just be clear, this is the forecast council debt including water. So this is assuming that we don't set up the new water entity, which apparently is going to be incorporated tomorrow. So it's a little bit misleading, but nevertheless, if you look at what our forecast debt, including water, is going to be, you'll see that it's going up. And then the two red lines there represent our upper and lower fixed interest requirements. We've had quite a bit of discussion between Mike, myself and Bancorp this week, because you'll see right at the very right-hand side, there is now a little gap appearing between the lower fixed interest cover and what fixed interest swaps we have in place. Obviously, it doesn't occur until late 2029, but it does mean that we're slightly out of policy at the moment. The Bancorp have also been appointed to be the Treasury advisors for the water entity. The person that's been appointed to that is different to the people that advise this council. So it was interesting having a conversation with him about our Treasury policy, because what it's highlighted potentially is that there are some things for us to think about when we go into the next LTP and do a review of this policy. So, for example, we look at our forecast debt. The advisor for the water entity was a little bit surprised at that, because a lot of councils that he deals with work on actual debt and don't look at forecast debt, because there's always a risk when you're looking at forecast debt that the forecasts are wrong and that the debt doesn't come on, that the capital programs get slowed or stopped for any reason. And there have been situations in the past where councils have become overhedged. So he was a little bit surprised, but at the end of it, where we got to was that our policy is our policy. We need to be compliant with it. And we have agreed that what we will do to fix this issue is to take some further interest rate swaps with a forward start, finishing where that green line starts dropping off and taking it out for another 12 months to put us back into compliance. We've obviously got plenty of time to do that, because the cover doesn't cease till the end of 2029. Also at the bottom of page 31, there's a interest rate yield curve there. Again, this is the inverse of the what you saw earlier, where you saw the swap rates going up. This is just showing that currently the floating rate is quite low, and there's a very steep curve as you go looking at further longer term interest rate fixtures. And then other than that, on the top of page 32, there's our normal ratios that we track, and I'm pleased to say that we're compliant with those ratios. So other than the fixed interest cover at the tail end, we're compliant with everything else. So I hope the rest of the report is read, but happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
So where did we get to with we breached the ratio, therefore there must be some process whereby council signs off on that. Either the council signs off on that or this committee does. So that's the only, I'm quite sure where we are with that process.
So that was one of
And
the other
help you.
questions we had around the current policy. Is it silent on what the action and response is to a breach? So really it's up to this table whether they want to escalate it further or whether they're happy to accept that working with Bancorp to rectify it and put it back into compliance well before we get to 2029.
Just from my point of view, Mr. Chairman, if I may, first on the process thing, I'm certainly happy with it being reported here in the first instance. And if you need to report it further, I mean, certainly we can pick it up in reporting from this committee to council. In terms of the substantive issue, when I talked to Brent about this, there's a little bit of water to go under the bridge before we reach 2029, and some of that is the water entity being detached from the council and the impact on the council's debt profile and the age profile of that debt as we move forward. So I'd almost be reluctant to see us rush into bringing it back into compliance with when the actual landscape might be quite different at that time, and what we do now might actually be might cost us money. I think we need to do the work of forecasting out what we think that looks like and taking a risk-based approach to how we manage that and reporting that back to this committee. But I think Mr. Chamberlain has a plan for doing that work. I'm very interested in any guidance the committee may wish to give, and I think we should note it here, and that there is remediative action, if that's a word, that we're planning, but that we need to do that in a contextually aware basis of what's going to change in our financial position, our debt position, and our the things that we know are going to happen or that we're actually working towards actively making happen over that period.
When the water entity's about to be formed, and it sounds as though that process is largely not a done deal, but it's in train. Would you do that in consultation with the new CFO? Because of this instrument will end up on their balance sheet at some point in time. Would you do that in consultation with their chief financial officer and saying?
But this is partly why I reached out to the person that's looking after the water entity in Bancorp, as opposed to, well, I also reached out to our own treasury advisors. I said, because what I was trying to understand was, while these are our fixed interest bands, what fixed interest bands was the new entity going to work to? Did the new entity even want me to take out this swap? Because this swap will be handed over to the new entity, because 85% of our total debt is water, but actually that 85% actually exceeds our external debt. So actually all of our external debt and all of our swap book is going to be handed to this new entity. If you redid this graph without water in, there is no breach. So so I was trying to get some advice from Bancorp on how they wanted us to proceed. At this point, they aren't that far advanced in terms of their thinking. They haven't developed the treasury policy for the new entity. They're still in the process of trying to understand what the three councils' individuals' positions are.
Is that assumption got some weight in terms of that they'll take all our debt? Because there's not a methodology they'll use where they pro rata the debt, we get left with some, but I don't know where they're at, but we're certain, 100% certain the whole lot's going to go over, or is there still a risk they'll pro rata it against some sort of asset-based calculation? We're left with some debt.
So the initial discussions I've had with David from Bancorp is that for councils like Hastings, there will be a proratering of debt. With our particular council, as I said earlier, we've got 48 million of external debt, but we've actually got about 60 million of total debt because we actually borrow from other parts of the council using reserves to fund internal. There's no point us handing over a proportion of a land transport internal debt or community facilities internal debt to the entity. So what I have suggested to him and he thinks is practical is that we hand over our external debt and that there'll be about $2 million of internal debt as well, which they will replace with an external loan and give us the cash back. And that that goes back to one of the other earlier points around this disaster funding mechanism was that we were going to set up some of those reserves in real cash as opposed to using them for external internal borrowing. And so this will help seed some of that.
Okay. You got a subsequent
Yeah,
question?
I'll just give you my pennies worth. Look, this is a technical point. For my monies, I'm happy for it just to do whatever you think's the best way to go. I mean, if we put a hedge in place here, we're in compliance with the policy, great. If we don't put a hedge in place, I don't think there's a huge amount of risk here. So I'm ambivalent on the way we do it. I am disappointed with our Treasury advisors, though, that the policy's not right. And, you know, they should know better than that. You know, the policy should be quite clear when there's a breach, what the process is. So we need to fix that up. And I think there's some other things in the policy that need to be looked at, but that's another issue for another time.
So we're planning at the next risk and assurance meeting to bring the policy back and do a review on it as part of getting ready for the LTP. So we can have those discussions then.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with Michael around the approach. Chief Executive around Ross, how we do this. I think because it's so far out, it's a minimal amount, you know, and so the approach you're taking in your papers, I think it's fine. The policy to have a look at.
I think if we added a resolution that the committee notes the policy breach or future policy breach, or if there's a policy breach, but also notes the approach, notes, and if you're comfortable, endorses the approach that's being taken to address that over time in the context of the establishment of the water entity.
No further questions. We're happy to capture that recommendation.
The committee notes the policy breach.
And notes and endorses the work, the approach being taken to address the policy breach, particularly in the context of the establishment of the Water Services CCO.
So you have to work with the CCO because the CCO advisors saying they want to get the thing hedged. Yeah. So there's a bit of a dilemma. It's not an easy answer. So
where I got to with the Treasury advisor from the water entity was he was a little bit ambivalent as well, but he said the policy is the policy, take a swap, get back in policy, and we're happy to inherit it.
So I just had one other question, if that's all right. Everybody okay with that? Just in relation to the LGFA covenants on page 32, is it possible for us to put in some future forward-looking things like the 30th of June in this case, or it will be something in the future so we can see? Because I'm just concerned that we could, you know, inadvertently breach a covenant, and I just didn't want that to happen, but I want to be able to see in the future that we're not going to. Is that possible?
So if I understand you correctly, so what we're reporting here is
Now.
as at the
Yep.
31st of May, but you'd also like to see a forecast of the 30 June.
So when the next time you report, it'll be the next June, I guess. And in which case the what's all going into the water entity there, but you'll still have it there, won't you? Is the water entity getting done by next June?
Water entity is being established on Friday.
Yeah.
But the actual asset transfer and operational transfer doesn't happen till the 1st of July 2027.
Okay, so that's really important then. So we have this the forecast of these ratios as of 30th of June 27 in here, because we just want to make sure that there's no potential breach. And if there is a potential breach, then what are we going to do about it? So we've got plenty of runway to sort that problem out if there is one.
So you're wanting before we transfer the assets or post?
Before we do.
Before, okay.
So we can monitor it up to the 30th of June 27 and see that we're not going to be in breach. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think we can work towards that. I think that's part of the work we talked about before of actually forecasting out what our profiles are going to look like as we work through the discussions with the water entity. So it may not be a instantaneous thing, but I certainly think we can work towards putting that in place.
Yeah. And also with that graph on page 30, the your fixed interest cover graph, if Bancorp have got this right, they should be able to put different time. They should be able to put different dates in here. Instead of today's date, they put a date in the future, and then you can see this thing running for what it's going to look like. I mean, they should be doing this all for you, I would have thought.
So obviously, to your point, every month that goes by, the graph shifts slightly to the right, and that.
Yeah. So you've obviously, I wasn't sure whether
it becomes slightly bigger, and they can certainly run those models forward and show what the size of the gap will be and what we need to put in place to cover that.
Yeah, so that should be part of your decision-making process and all of this swap thing, I would have thought. But this is what they should be doing all the time. We should have spotted this. We should have been able to spot this quite a long way back, and then we should have planned for it when we had the opportunity to, if that makes sense. I just think in hindsight, I know it's all going to come to an end, but I'm just saying if they'd been giving you some good advice, they should be able to tell you this is coming and we shouldn't have got to this situation. Cheers.
Just one last question too, and this is in the spirit of collaboration and doing things properly, but is there any tactical things we should be thinking about prior to the water entity moving assets over, and or we're quite well, there's a lot of strict rules, and because I'm not suggesting for a moment we game it, but are there any practical things for the benefit of the council that we need to take advantage of that we're allowed to in preparation of moving into the water entity? Given our debt profile, probably not. But,
yeah, so
it's just
one of the things that we've been asked to do is to basically carry on as if they were going to be our assets on the July 27, and not to do anything to game the system in the next 12 months that would adversely affect the water entity.
one of the things I was thinking about is, are we continually our capital program as though they're ours, and we're peeling that right back and
Mr. Kinberg may wish to comment, but from the council's preparations and consideration of whether to move into the water entity, quite a revision of the capital program was done in 2025 to set out what the investment program would be. That was a reduction on the previous LTP, but it was still quite a significant program, including the second supply project from Waipawa bores to treatment plant to Waipukaro. So that is the basis on which the team is taking going forward. And I think in answer to the other part of your question, we have got an internal program team, obviously coordinating across the water entity establishment and transfer. There will be considerable attention being paid to that transfer process and ensuring that without certainly not gaming the system, but ensuring that everything that is appropriately transferred in terms of asset and debts and arrangements associated with those is identified and transferred.
Yeah, so so the benefits that we propose to receive as a consequence of this change, we are actually going to get them. Because that's the key thing, isn't it?
Well, yes, and we just need to be careful that we're thinking, and Councillor Byrne always reminds me of this, that we're thinking about the person who will still be paying the bills, because while the council can change its financial position and how its balance sheet looks, the person paying the bill will still be paying the bill, and we don't want to make them in a worse position.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to that, Mr. Chair, we've got a requirement under the transition agreements to make sure that we don't put too much additional risk onto the CCO as we pass over services on the 1st of July 27. So we are continuing with our significant programs of work, particularly around wastewater compliance with the equipment that we intend to install over the next 12 months in Waipukurau, and also the flagship project for this council, which is the second supply. We've had lots of discussions around the vulnerability of our reservoirs, particularly a reservoir in Waipukurau and the falling mains. So that project basically provides much more resilience for our community.
And the process of establishing values and all that sort of stuff all happens on the 30th of June 27, doesn't it? So the benefits of those will be accrued to us, those investments we're making in the infrastructure.
Well, actually, through you, Chair, the second supply is a good example of a multi-year project. So it's about 2.5 years to completion from now. So that project will actually carry over to the CCO on the 1st of July 27, as if it was the same organisation delivery. So that's part of the transition plan that we're currently working through with.
You're right, Chairman. The improvements and the debt accrued to that time will be. We will be working to ensure that's captured in the transfer agreement.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? You want to read the resolution for us, and then we can.
When it's received,
So the first resolution is to receive the report. Do a second read. We'll do it together.
Do them together. Yeah.
Together. Yep.
And the second one is that the committee notes the policy breach and notes and endorses the approach being taken to address the breach, particularly in the context of the Water Services CCO
Establishment, particularly in the context of the establishment of Services CCO.
Do we need to, management needs to report on what they've done? Right.
Yeah, we just put a third one, when you're ready. The committee requests the chief executive to report back on progress in addressing the breach.
that the committee requests
Chief executive report back on progress as management have made. Press was probably
that the committee requests the chief executive to report back on progress his management has made to address the breach.
Three resolutions. Are we all those? Have a mover, Michael, seconder, Pip, thank you very much. Carried. Great, thank you. Brent, that was very good conversation. Right, yo. Not very good in time management. Right, yo. Up to the risk status reports. Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Risk status report I will take as read. So the status report is continuing to focus on those risks where either something has changed in one of the controls or there's been a change in that risk trending out of appetite. So you'll see from the report in front of you, there's been no key movements in this last quarter. There have been a couple of changes to controls, which was a result of those controls being reviewed over the last 3 months. We do have our risk owners in the room if there are any detailed questions on any of those controls. The plan going forward, we were to do a deep dive into all of the risks with the controls. We are now timing that as the asset management plans feeding into the long-term plan process is occurring. There's quite a substantial piece of work to align all of those risk registers that are sitting across council into one main risk register. So we've got that piece of work underway, and also to help inform that is council are due to refresh the risk appetite settings, and at this stage we're looking at bringing that to an August workshop. So those two pieces of work together, I think by the next quarter, will give us that deep dive update. It just made sense to tie all of those work programs in, so we were doing the risk register refreshes at the same time as the development of the plans. Welcome to take any questions.
Questions?
I've got quite a few questions, so I have actually had a chat with you, so I've cleared some of them. Just to regard the risk appetite statement that we're going to do, have we got you said before the start of the financial year, are you planning on having that all done by June, are you? Or, I just haven't got hadn't got a date in here, so.
Through you, Chair, it won't be done by the end of this financial year, so we're looking at the August council workshop. So the refreshed risk appetite and refreshed registers to come to the October R&A committee.
So is the committee's not going to get a chance to have any input into the risk appetite? Is that what I'm hearing, or I just don't into a council workshop?
Successful, yeah, that one.
So through the chair, typically no, because the risk appetite settings are the appetite of council, not the risk and assurance committee itself. But as Mrs. North has just said, you will see if there are any changes. I suspect there will be little, because our risks haven't really changed over the last 12-ish months now. I don't expect there to be much change, but you will receive any outcomes in the next R&A meeting.
Okay, that's fine. It'd be quite good to get a copy of a draft. Is it possible to circulate a copy? I wouldn't mind having a look at it if that's possible, but you're saying it's just going to be the same as the previous one?
Through the chair in the report, this is these colours here are the appetite setting of council currently. You do have that information. There's nothing further than that.
So it's rinse and repeat, yeah, okay, it's okay. All right. So we can expect get an update at that at the next meeting. Yeah. Okay. The stranded overheads risk. So what was the plan with that? We just lumped with it, are we? Is that the answer?
No, I haven't got Mrs. Harvey in the room, but Mr. Chamberlain can speak to that one.
So stranded overheads, essentially at this point in time, the water component of council wears more than a third of council's total overheads. Obviously, when the water transition goes, some of those overheads are direct overheads and we are able to remove, but some of the overheads will be left behind. So, for example, both my salary and Mr. McLeod's salary is one of the overheads. Obviously, when you hand over a water entity, we don't, by default, take a reduction in pay, so the overhead is left behind. One of the things that we did as part of setting this annual plan that was adopted this morning was to re-look at those overheads and see if we could reallocate some of them. So yes, water is still wearing a large proportion of our overheads, but it's actually slightly less as a percentage than the year before. So we've already taken the first step, and then obviously once we get the water entity up and running, we'll look at doing more reconfigurations of how council's put together. The other thing to bear in mind is that while the new water entity will become operational on day 1 of the 27-28 financial year, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to take over everything, and so council will, for a transition period, still be doing some work for the water entity, and we'll be able to invoice for that. And so it gives us a slightly longer runway to deal with these stranded overheads.
Okay.
Through the chair, I think that's a good answer that Brent's given. I personally am not a big fan of the term stranded overheads. It sort of connotes that you don't have any decision making in the issue. And Brent's pointed out some good examples there of, you know, things that could be stranded overheads. But as we work through the water entity and its set up and work out what's going to go with the water entity and what's going to be left behind, and some things will go holus bolus, lift and shift. Some things will be some surgery to separate bits of the organisation and make some calls about who goes where. There will need to be an exercise alongside that, and it's not it won't be a draconian exercise, but about looking at what the organisation needs to do and what it needs in terms of resources to do that. And that will be an exercise that then you look at, well, how does that compare to what's left and how do you manage those things? So yeah, I'm not, it's not my inclination that we'll just be accepting what's left. We'll be looking to actively manage, perhaps over a little bit of time, but actively manage our disposition and how we shape ourselves to move forward.
Yeah. It's a big one for the organisation, given that the water is such a big part of the organisation, and that's why I asked the question. We've obviously got a plan, so that's solved it.
Well, we don't have one yet.
Well, he's telling me it's in the annual plan, and so
yeah.
So there's a number of things that we're doing to try and lessen the impact.
There's quite a bit of work to do in that space.
Yes, I can imagine.
Could I just to add, kind of add and supplementary to that, maybe to you, CE, is a bit like the last paper. It was all of this done in the context of the environment we're working in, and simplifying local government is probably becoming a big part of the context around this particular point and everything else.
Yes, I think that's a fair comment as well. We probably won't know all the answers to that question by the time we get to the 30th of June 2027, but that will be probably another round of the implications of that on if we are in Head Start, and if there is change, and if the government is committed to enacting change by October 2028, then that will be an even larger set of questions to answer.
And in the meantime, we've got to deliver services to our ratepayers.
Yeah, I've got quite a few questions. Last time I did this, I didn't have many, but I've got quite a few, and I was reading through it. So apologies. And if they're a dumb question, I apologise for that, because I don't know our business that well. I'm just asking a question about the failure to maintain council's earthquake-prone buildings, the municipal theatre in Waipukurau and the memorial. Well, I just wondered if a control there might be, if they're damaged, they're not replaced. Because do we insure those or not? Because if they're earthquake prone, I doubt whether the insurers would want to have a bar of them.
So through the chair, yes, we do insure those buildings. There are different levels of earthquake prone buildings that council owns. Some of them we've got full earthquake cover. Others we don't have earthquake cover, but we do have fire replacement cover. So depending on the type of disaster, it will depend on whether the insurance will respond.
Right, so if we had an earthquake and it leveled the municipal theatre and the memorial hall, would we replace those buildings? So I'm just trying to dig in here. Is there a control? Is that we would just walk away?
So through you, Chair, we've had a kind of related conversation recently at council around the number of community facilities that we have, the utilisation, and that's certainly a conversation that's probably going to feature in the next LTP. So I'm sure there would be a consideration about whether that would be a facility that we would replace, or would it be reshaped in a different location in a different way, or would there be a consolidation of community facilities?
Yeah. But is it inextricably linked with the insurance? Because why do we insure stuff that we're not going to replace? And I just wondered if we'd had all that conversation. So, oh yes, that's what I'm trying to flesh out here as well.
Not yet. That is a conversation I suspect that we are going to get into as part of the LTP around community facilities. We've got a number of facilities that are aging and need works. So yeah, that's a hot topic at the moment.
Okay.
I could say that if we think it's going to be an earthquake on those that's going to hit those buildings that aren't insured, we'll arrange a fire first. So that inappropriate.
Okay, no, thanks. That was all right. Okay. Yeah, the critical workplace accident and incidents, we are reporting that we have a low appetite, yet we're well out of appetite. So are we serious in saying that we don't have confidence in our controls? It's on the second page.
That one.
Yep.
Through the chair. So what we're referring to there is that the critical risk program is up and running. And as we move through verifying those controls, that's what the measurement will be against this. So at the moment, if we went and did a complete audit across everything right now, we haven't implemented all of those critical controls.
Yeah, I just feel that maybe we've been a bit harsh putting a red on there. It's probably more like an orange. I think we're saying we're not as good as we actually are. And that's
So through the chair, we had a similar conversation, I think, at the last Risk and Insurance Committee, and the example that we used, it was actually around roading, and it was to do with bridges, and despite every control that we put in place, it was still the consequence was really high. And in this case, for this health and safety example, despite every control that we could put in place, whether they are mature or not, the outcome of someone dying is still obviously of significant impact to us. So therefore, even after the application of the control, the consequence, if it did happen, remains high. So therefore, the risk is showing red in the report, and will continue to, irrespective of any critical risk standard or control or procedure that's put in place. In the event it happens, it would still be significant impact.
I think that explanation and just in the notes to the right-hand side, I think would be beneficial to the reader, especially if it goes up to the council. It's so I concur with what you're doing, and having that narrative there would be quite simple.
Yeah, I just get it. I guess it puts a bit of red light for me that we don't have. It sort of spells to me we don't have confidence in what we've done. So, and I think we have done a lot of good stuff, but I just think we've been a bit hard on ourselves putting a red in there. I mean, it's subjective, I guess, but you see where I'm coming from.
And through the chair, perhaps a way that we could address that, which we have done previously with this report, is that we've used trending arrows, and that might be useful to have one of those in to essentially show the work that Ms. McLean and Ms. Anand are doing is improving our controls that we have in the organisation, and therefore the risk is trending down because we're decreasing the likelihood. However, the consequence will always remain the same.
Okay. Thank you.
through you, Chair, just want to add a really good example on that, the transport, working in the transport corridor, irrespective of what controls are in place, we're still dealing with random members of the public that can behave badly. And so the consequence is still there.
Yeah.
We're not in control of everything within our environment. And we have had some bad behaviours on a number of our sites.
So taking to the logic extent, you're never going to be able to put green on here.
Correct.
That's what you're telling me.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
in our risk matrix, the outcome will remain in red because of the consequence, the level.
Okay, I'm comfortable.
But through the chair, we absolutely can add some commentary
Yeah.
that addresses the work that is being undertaken to improve on the controls and.
It's really putting things in context on this particular one, you know, because if you saw that, you'd say, we should stop work. Which is not what you're saying at all, right? But I understand the emphasis upon if an event, you've got the randomness of the public, and if an event did take place, it could be catastrophic, right? And so really this is showing to the reader that this risk is very, very hard to manage. And if it did occur, it could be quite serious, and therefore we're doing the best we possibly can. But the reality is the reality. I think that's the context by which the reader needs to understand this. Yeah. Good on you. Okay.
Okay, so just another question about the roading recovery. What is the far rate that we now have? The new high far rate. What is it? I'm just curiosity more than
through you, Chair, the far rate for the majority of our works, phases 1 to 4, is 89%.
89%. Okay.
It's the NZTA funded.
That's the NZTA funded. We do have some NUI funding, which is managed by NIFCO now, which is 100% for 4 specific projects. And we do have a small amount of other resilience works that's funded at 80% FAR. But the majority of what we're doing at the moment is at 89%, which will be in place until the end of June 2029.
My next question was on the major privacy breach of customer information. I suspect this is probably the similar type of approach that you've got to the other one, is that there's a high consequence if something does happen, and it's not a lack of controls, cyber controls, that's causing the issue.
Yeah. And I'm also mindful we are workshopping this afternoon. Too.
Yes, yeah, we're going to dive a bit deeper into it this afternoon, but yes, you nailed it. It is the consequence is still going to remain high. Even we can put as many controls in as we like there.
Be interesting to know what Hastings has got on their risk register. Do they have the same as us, given that they're doing the same thing? Just as an interest. Okay, that's cool. We can chat about it this afternoon. That was all I had. Thank you very much.
Yes, I just had a couple of questions. One was regarding the delivery of water services unaffordable to the ratepayer. And I'm just wondering whether we're actually getting to the point that just rates are unaffordable, whether that's a risk that we need to, because obviously we are going to lose water at some point. But I still think that somewhere on our radar, we do have to have that water is still being paid by our community. I'm not sure whether we need another line, because what's left, it's still going to be a risk, I think. And I'm not sure how we word it or where we put it, but I think we talked about it earlier. I think it needs to be still in there somewhere.
Through you, Chair, we'll consider that's a valid point, I think, to add an additional risk just on general provision of services and infrastructure.
We
may just need to look at the CCO specific risk in terms of our ownership interests and control, rather than the service delivery. I don't have a fully formed answer to this, Councillor, but I'm just thinking through the just how we can capture our relationship to that risk as it changes.
I just don't think we still have an obligation. I think we can't just chop and okay.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because are you going to be advocating for quality of service Because the ratepayer won't really distinguish between the two entities in terms of providing services. You're all going to be caught up in the same thing, aren't you?
We will just need to factor in as it starts to take effect, the economic regulation aspect, the role of the Commerce Commission in that. So let's stop the power sector from having 8% increases year on year, but whether as they balance affordability and investment efficiency and those things, but I think we can give that some thought. And
Yeah, because unfortunately local water done well didn't have a lot of detail on affordability at all, and unless we keep pushing it, it's just going to be lost in the and then I just had one other comment. And it's something that Mayor Foley raises, and I'm not sure whether it's a suitable control, but the failure of critical roading infrastructure and just our position on advocating for the community over innovation. And I don't know whether we can, we're doing it with water infrastructure. We're, able to off the shelf type arrangements now. I'm just wondering whether, that's a control, or it could be, an aspiration in the future that actually you can buy a bridge. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, through you, Chair, we are working on that initiative at the moment with the Mayor and our CE as well, just on the opportunity of promoting a take-up of modular construction and standardisation across the whole country. So I'm in live conversations with NZTA technical teams. Also been invited to a panel discussion as well in August on that very topic as well. So it is gathering pace across New Zealand. But yeah, there are significant opportunities to reduce cost with modularisation and standardisation. In international experience says that we could save up to 30% or even more. Yep.
Yeah, if I'm allowed to just add something to that, I think the other part to that risk, which is quite important, is it speaks to the criticality of certain pieces of infrastructure, so that the modularity can apply across our whole network, our whole infrastructure base, but the risk itself speaks to criticality. And part of the work that we're doing at the moment in that council table will see in the upcoming Land Transport Asset Management Plan is our approach to how we best spend every dollar and target it to favour the higher criticality pieces of our network. So that's another part to that control where in the future, through targeted funds from NZTA, Mr. Kinvig was mentioning the 80% fire rate that's targeted at certain routes on our network, as well as our approach, our strategic approach coming up in the management plan will again inherently be a control and start to reduce that risk.
Thanks. Just kind of in response to that, to Mark, the strategy work, while it's in draft form, just addressing Councillor Byrne's point around costs and innovation and efficiency, and hopefully that sort of draft work in the strategy kind of, would you agree, addresses some of that going forward in terms of focus of the council?
Yeah, through you, Chief. Yeah, I mean, I've not got full visibility over that yet.
Workshop we did the other night here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of council driving that innovation, value for money, and that translates from strategy through to how we think about renewal of infrastructure as officers. Absolutely. Yeah.
This observation is following from your conversation, but it's with the water assets disappearing, clearly our risk profile as a council changes materially. Because that was going to sink us, right? And so it'll be good at some point just to, even if it's just a little circle of, if you go down through the critical risks we've got here and saying, well, if water goes, we need to look at this one goes up, this one is gone, you know, it'll be good just to at some point, and it doesn't have to be for the next meeting, but just thinking through, goes back to that benefits case of the water assets going is, you know, what do we expect to see the benefits then coming back as our risk profile? We've still got roads and we've still got people and cyber and all these things, but you know, it gets, you know, sort of messaging to the community saying we've done the deal, it's gone, these things are now off our table. However, there's a couple of things now we're going to focus on as a watch and brief on behalf of you as the community. Yeah, so it's just an observation more than a question. So any other questions? Right, thank you. For the recommendation is to receive the risk status report. If I could have moved in a second, please. Michael and Pip, thank you very much, and it's carried. I'm just noting we're just a little over our lunch break, but we can just punch on through and now moving through to, thank you, team. So, now moving through to elected members' expenses for October to 31 March. So this is quite a big period, and I presume that's the October's the start date of the new council, isn't it? Yep. Okay. I will hand over to Brent.
Happy to take the report as read. This is just part of our transparency reporting that we do, and as the chair has just mentioned, this covers from the start of the triennium up until the end of March, and there were significant meetings in there, as well as the councillor induction, which is the large part of what's driving the costs you see there on the table. But you take it as read.
Any questions? No? Michael? No? Great. Thank you, Brent. So the recommendation there is that the Audit Committee receives the elected members' expenses for the start of the 25-28 triennium, covering the period of October 25 to 31 March 26. So move it in a seconder, please. Move. Thanks, Pip. Michael, seconder. Motion carried. Now moving through to the assurance monitoring of the Mayoral Fund.
Again, this is a transparency report. The Mayor is provided with a $5,000 fund each year to provide to at his discretion to worthy individuals or groups. And during the period that we're looking at, there has only been one grant listed there on 0.5 to the Hawke's Bay Business Association. So happy to take the report as read.
Questions? No. Thank you, Brent. The recommendation here is that the Audit Risk Committee receives and notes the assurance monitoring report from the Mayoral Fund. Move in a second, thanks. Pip. Oh, motion carried. Thank you very much. Elected members hearing interest register. Got your name beside it, Ross.
I think we to take the report read as well through you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a transparency type report. The interests are listed. I don't have much more to say.
Questions?
My only question is, and I assume, are we in compliance with the Act? Someone would have checked it, so I need someone to say that he's the officers, if the officers, whoever's prepared it, he's in charge here. Not.
Mr. Chamberlain is nodding at me.
Yes, this is in compliance with the Act, and this paper that you see, or the attachment that you see, is also available on our website as required under the Act.
That's good. That's all I'm worried about. Thanks.
Any other questions? No. Recommendation is that the committee receives the February 26 summary of elected our member procuring interest, noting that there are no materiality identified by the register. Yep. We're gonna put promotion. Well, carried. Thank you. Date for next meeting is the 12th of August. Are we comfortable with that? Because it was the October one we've moved, haven't it? Yeah. So we're happy to meet again on the 12th of August. And I presume that's to do the audit and bits and pieces.
12th of August
Will be
will be
halfway through.
I don't think the auditors will be through their audit at that point. I think that's normally the October meeting.
October. Okay. Good. We're happy with the August date. Well, thank you.
Nick may have.
Sorry, through the chair, can I just suggest that we look at that date? I'm just thinking in the context of some of our reporting cycles, that's only in 6 weeks' time, and we've just provided some of these reports today. So I just wonder if we discuss that with you.
I can just pick up a little bit.
Pardon me. I just wonder if we leave that date on the table, Chair, just because it's quite soon after this meeting. Typically they're spread out a little more, and I wonder if some of the dates have changed along the way, and we've ended up with a compressed time in between the meetings, and there might not be something substantial to update you on. So I'm suggesting that we just leave that on the table and come back to confirm a date if that's okay with our CE there as well. I didn't pick that up at the agenda preview.
It's okay with me.
Yep, okay with me. Yeah, just get the date sorted pretty quickly because
Calendars
filling up.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the recommendation is we hold off setting a date for the next meeting. Yeah. You're comfortable with that? Thank you. Righty ho. Come to the close of public area, so we move into public excluded. The reasons are outlined in our papers there in the agenda. Are we comfortable to move through to public excluded?
Yes,
And motion carried. Thank you very much. Right, hope we can stop recording and we'll be back soon to do. We'll have a break for 5 minutes or 20 minutes.
Lunch is probably,
We want to be back. So it's 20 past. So we back to quarter to quarter to 2.
Yeah.
Thank you.